a lot of things broke that first year.
Yeah.
I remember, for example, we're an accounting firm. We're really good about doing our clients' books and taxes.
Yeah.
I didn't do my accounting until
Man, I knew this
the
was
last
coming.
day of
Yeah.
the tax extension, not even the first deadline.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at what I made and just feeling extreme disappointment. I remember thinking I made $50,000 and I left a job where I made way more than that.
Yeah.
And again, I had a little bit of a nest egg, and I think by that point I was starting to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I remember just feeling like this isn't it.
Welcome to Season 2 of Behind the Business. I'm your host, Fahim Savja. Every episode, we go beyond the business plans and discover the real life and untold stories of today's entrepreneurs. It's time for the people behind the business. Let's get into it. Hey there, just a quick note before we dive in. Alongside Behind the Business, I run a small consulting practice called Savja Advisory. We work with fintechs, founders, and financial institutions. Whether it's product strategy, partnerships, or business transitions, we're in the business of helping small businesses and those who serve them succeed. If that's you, check us out at savjaholdings.com/advisory. All right, back to your episode.
All right, Miguel, thank you so much for being on Behind the Business. I appreciate you being here. And before we get right into it, I'd love to know a little bit more about TaxHack, what you guys provide, and then we'll jump right into your story and how you founded the company. So what is TaxHack?
Yeah, TaxHack, look, we believe that our entrepreneur client is the superhero here, and what we do is we support them along a hopefully long journey of going from startup to established business to potential exit.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what are kind of the services that you provide them along the way to make sure they kind of get to a larger, hopefully very successful business?
Yeah, the way that we support businesses will grow with them. So I would say we look at it as a pyramid. So top of the pyramid is going to be compliance.
Yeah.
So, the bean counting,
Yeah.
how much money came in, how much went out. And as you graduate from that, you start dealing with more problems. What do I do when I'm actually profitable?
Yeah.
What point of sale system do I use? If you sell on Shopify, it's different than if you're an Airbnb host versus running a blockchain company where you've got a lot of stuff to untangle. So I'd say the first block has to do with understanding your business and how to count the ones and zeros. And as we move to that, we start moving into our advisory services, which have to do with where do you want to be and what are cash needs, compliance needs, and people needs to get there. So everything that spans that from helping clients work through their cap table to working with their network of advisors, which include attorneys, banks,
Yeah, for sure.
and helping them really find what we call the finance stack that they need to run their business. And that's going to change. I mean, if you think about really early business, the goals just make revenue. So we're not going to get in your head about tax credits and compliance needs that happen after a different stage of business. We're really serious. We grow the advisory with the stage of the client business. And that means being a good quarterback, and it means being a therapist sometimes.
For sure.
And cheerleader.
Yeah, 100%. A big reason why I started this podcast is to get folks to consider entrepreneurship as a pathway, but not necessarily the sugar-coated, glamorized view of entrepreneurship, to understand what it's actually like, right? And your story is super inspiring to me because not only are you providing these services to folks who are actually trying to build their own business, but you're building the business itself, right? TaxHack and your services. So tell me a bit about you. You were at a big accounting firm like a lot of folks, and you said, this isn't really working for me.
That's right. About me, I always go back to the roots. I'm a Latino kid, born in East LA.
Yeah.
Grew up there. I was always asking the question when I traveled is, why is this place different than that? And for me, my parents took me to Mexico every year.
Yeah.
And I was having these profound, socioeconomic questions. Why did my parents immigrate here?
Yeah.
And it brought me back as I, progressed in school to really wanting to understand economics. And that brought me into a career where I was in public accounting. I did international tax. And that opened up a whole new stage of how does the economy really work at the micro level.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think where my passion really came out is getting even more micro. So first with the Fortune 500 business, understanding at a somewhat intermediate level what the incentives and challenges are, and then saying, well, how does this translate down to the small business?
Yeah.
So that brought me to, I think, 2016. I had peers leaving to go to startups, and I had buddies that were starting their own companies. And they would say, hey, Miguel, I know you work at a public accounting firm. Can you help me?
Out?
Yeah. I'm like, it doesn't work like that. You don't have the same issues.
Exactly.
And I think understanding what those issues were and how solvable they were, and understanding that like what you really need as an entrepreneur is an ecosystem, whether it's a formal or an informal advisory board.
For sure.
And my passion came out because like I desperately want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And I would say everything we've done since then has been a progression of figuring out, what the tools, advice, even community. I mean, sometimes the answer is joining a peer network.
Yep.
And that's been really cool to see. So, I think my story is one about like, how does this economy work?
Mm-hmm.
How does it work at the micro level? And then how do we optimize? How do we find strategies that work across the board? And then, sometimes like in tax, it's all about finding exceptions.
Yeah.
Now the Fortune 500 have armies of people finding those exceptions and loopholes.
Mm-hmm.
And we ultimately ask, who's finding yours?
Yeah.
And that was the answer for me for saying, I'm going to start this on my own. And it's been really cool finding other like-minded clients, but also like-minded people that, I work with and I call partners and managers in our firm that have the same mentality.
Yeah, that's really cool because I mean, I'll be super honest, my entire group of friends, I feel like, including my wife, are accountants. And I make the joke of the zeros and ones all the time. It does not go over well at home, let me tell you that. But that being said, a lot of folks, my friends included, have also thought about entrepreneurship, right? And wondered, okay, well, would it really work if I tried something out on my own? And would it really be profitable down the road for me? So what are you seeing, not only in your experience of leaving a Big Four, but even in your existing client base of reasons why people start businesses? Is it because it's been in their family for so long? Is it because they're just intrinsically motivated? What is it about folks just trying something out on their own?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think that those are pretty established assumptions of why you would start it, that you know exactly what you're going to do.
Totally.
You come from a family of entrepreneurs, or you have the right experience. And I think entrepreneurship, as you know, is a risk.
Yeah.
So it is a function of being a little crazy.
Yeah.
But I would also say, I guess I would challenge that as an accountant myself, is that it comes from a place of confidence as well.
Yeah.
For accountants, we really like to know the thing.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we frustrate our clients because we're like, hey, we really need to understand these transactions. Like, why? And I think that comes back to the point that I think if you, number one, are willing to take the risk, and number two, have a pretty strong hypothesis that you're willing to iterate, but have done your homework. I mean, I think those are the tools for it. And I think the reason kind of brings me to the question of like, why don't people that should start businesses? And I think what they're either missing the craziness or they're missing the homework. Because ultimately what we believe is that every business is a value creating enterprise.
Yeah.
What you're doing is you're creating value that someone else will pay for. Mm-hmm. As soon as you understand that works at the unit economics level, meaning I can sell this widget for $3 and pay $2, then the question becomes scale, which is, as you know, a whole other
it's a whole other thing.
Yeah. And the people that I think that are doing it well are people that learn really fast. So I think taking that first step is like takes either a push or sometimes security, whether that's, a spouse that's working that allows you to take that risk.
Totally.
Or whether it's having a nest egg, or, for me, it was having a combination of severance and a big bonus. So like my story was I waited till I got my manager bonus. Yeah. It came on 3/31, and 3/31 was my last day.
You're kidding.
At PwC. And that was it for me. So I had a little bit of security that helped me take that risk, right? And I had the confidence, I think, and part of that confidence is also a network. So going out and talking to the people that would be your prospective buyers, your ICP, and knowing that they have pain that you can relieve, I think
For
is
sure.
the crux. We all hear about business owners that ask like their parents, like, would you buy this from me? Yeah.
Yeah.
They say, yeah, I totally would. And then when you actually show up and you're like, here's the invoice, they're like, oh no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But I think you can trust pain. And I think, when we talk about like, what does it take? Is I think it takes a fundamental understanding of where things are breaking in whatever industry you want to serve.
Yeah.
And how you can add value in that space.
Yeah, I love that. I love the concept of, it takes pain to figure out what it is that you can actually help someone out with, right? Speaking of pain, I know that first year was probably really rough. Tell me a bit about that, what the struggles were that you encountered like right off the bat when you left on 331 and said, I'm going to start this thing. What was that first year like for you?
Yeah, it was rough. And it's one of those things I asked myself, like, would I do it again?
Yeah.
And I'd probably do it differently, but I definitely, there are some people that I think learn and then do. And I'm definitely kind of somewhere in the middle where I need to break things. So a lot of things broke that first year.
Yeah.
I remember, for example, we're an accounting firm. We're really good about doing our clients' books and taxes.
Yeah.
I didn't do my accounting until
man, I knew this was
the
coming.
last day of
Yeah.
the tax extension, not even the first deadline.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at what I made and just feeling extreme disappointment. I remember thinking I made $50,000 and I left a job where I made way more than that.
Yeah.
And again, I had a little bit of a nest egg, and I think by that point I was starting to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I remember just feeling like this isn't it. And back to the pain, I think it was that pain that propelled me like, okay, well, how do I do this differently?
Yeah.
And I think that's the mark today when I look at the clients. Like, we actually have a rating system where if you want to work with TaxHack, we're asking you certain questions to get a sense of who would be a successful partner for you. The people that say like, I don't want to learn any of this stuff, I just want to hand it off and never look at it, are actually not, we found that that's not a great trait. What's really successful is, hey, I don't want to worry about 80% of my taxes and counting. I do want to learn the 20% that's going to help me as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Those have been, I don't think it's a coincidence, the greatest clients and the most successful clients.
Yeah.
Learning is such a key factor in running a business. And that's what it took in year one for me to change. I don't know what version we're on now. I guess if every year is a version, we're on like V8.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think going from V1 to V2 takes a level of learning from pain.
For sure. Yeah. And so now it's been almost 9 years, right?
Almost, yeah.
Almost 9 years.
Yeah.
And thankfully you're past that first year,
Yeah.
which I feel like is probably the most painful for a lot of entrepreneurs building for their first time or even their second or third time. But like, was there an aha moment after that first year to be like, okay, I experienced a lot of pain and now something is clicking, something is working. Was there a moment like that?
Yeah, I would say, if I look back, I think there were two.
Okay.
I think one was I need someone else to sell the work.
Got it.
Or at least handle the first part of the funnel.
Like onboarding.
Onboarding and qualifying.
Okay, got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that opened up a whole new realm of opportunities because I was able to field all the demand that came through. Mm-hmm. And the second part of the funnel was also the second big lesson, which is who is really the best kind of client that I should work with? Because I think when you start a business, at least the way that I did it, is you think about, this is the service I can offer it, and who am I going to give it to? I'm going to give it to the world.
Yeah.
The world can benefit from this. So I took on my friends' parents.
Yeah.
I took on people that like were like, I don't even want to start a business, like I just I'm a, whatever it was, a W2. Yeah. Just like I have a 9 to 5 and I like you. And I was like, all right, sounds great. I'm adding one more.
Yeah.
I'm selling one more widget.
Yeah.
And that ultimately pulled down my ability to scale.
Yeah.
Because I had to work with N+1 number of playbooks,
and
didn't realize the value of niching was actually that your execution gets faster.
Yeah.
Not only does your sales and marketing get better because you're speaking to someone that's like, that's for me, but your ability to execute for their pain points is like, I'm just going to solve these 3, and I know I can. I think the problem that specific to like accounting and tax and the service, but applies to the service business, is that you say, I'm going to provide a high value service that solves N number of problems for you. And that's fine if you want to have a book that's 5 clients or 10 clients, whatever it is.
For sure.
But if you want to scale that, I think eventually you have to come up with a playbook that you can hand over to other people to do.
Yeah.
And they can't solve the problems the way that you can.
Yeah, fair enough.
So you've got to have, and that gets into building systems. So yeah, I think those 2 things were the aha moments. And it literally was sitting at a coffee shop with my friend's mom who wanted me to do their trust return. And I can still do those today.
Of course.
Out of the goodness of my heart, I do something like, my partner and I have a limit that we can do 20, call them bro bonos.
Bro bono. Okay.
But having that like coffee and then just leaving and realizing I was late on a proposal for a startup that was actually a really good lead.
Yeah.
And losing that deal as a result was the moment I was like, I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And that's where the sales came out, and that's where the ICP came out for me.
For sure. That makes sense. It's probably really difficult though, right? Like you want to help the folks that are ideally trying to support you by giving you business, especially in the beginning. But at some point you just gotta say no. Like, did you have to break up with, some of these folks to be like, I'm so sorry, I can't do these returns or your help anymore, your accounting?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the reality is that you have the option of letting the relationship fail, or either pricing them out or disengaging or whatever it is. And I found that it's better to have the hard conversation up front. And I think people understand. If you say, hey, look, we want to make sure that we're the right partner for you, and vice versa. I think that's what happened. But the funny group of clients that we got in year 1 were models. So we had friends that were like, digital marketing agencies were a yes. And then we had kind of a group of them that either dated or worked with models.
Oh, there you go.
This was it.
Okay.
And we ended up with all these models referring us their business, and they're all Schedule C. They're all, independent contractors, meaning they've got to track their expenses. And I mean, look, generalizing sometimes is a good business decision to realize that models are not very good at using accounting software.
Fair enough.
Okay. Yeah. And finding out that, okay, hey, I'm going to go through a lot of pain to ultimately file a return I don't believe in, because they're not looking to scale. They're not looking to track these things right. There's a lot of things actually that if you're in that space, you can't write off, that they think they can write off. Yeah. And that was a group where I was like, this is a group where we just have to tell them like, hey, we can't service you next year. We'll file you this year, not next year.
Man, telling models no is probably the hardest thing.
Especially for our sales guys. Like, I love these calls.
Of course. Oh man. No, that it makes a lot of business sense, right? Like in honing in on your type of client. And it seems like from my end that you guys have done that, right? In focusing on e-commerce, digital businesses, startups, folks that have a technology lens. Is that kind of the realm of companies you're trying to tackle?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think what we found is that, so this was 2016, 2017, when we launched. 2018, I would say, was V2, where we really started to scale. And during that time, like having QuickBooks Online, for example, a web-based practice was actually pretty rare. Now it's not. Now if your accountant says, hey, you've got to walk in and hand me your forms, like that's
no chance.
We figured out, it's like, look, we were an online business day one. I think that was actually what I thought would be the big marketing sell is, hey, we're a virtual tax service. Yeah. People don't care. What people care about is that when they need to give you something, that you have an established process for getting that information. And what we found is a lot of these businesses are already they're digital natives. Yeah. They're comfortable there. We don't work with construction companies.
Got you.
They've got, a trailer on the construction site with paper invoices. Yeah. They sometimes pay their employees cash. In terms of a workflow, we had to realize that rather than just figure out who we're not going to work with, let's figure out who's really comfortable in this digital space. And yeah, we gravitated towards any digital platform. Yeah. Meaning if you sell Shopify, that's a digital platform.
Yeah, I got you.
I have all your revenue. You just need to give me a user login so I can see it.
I love it.
And I can flow that into a cloud accounting software like Xero or QuickBooks. And we can basically do everything over email.
Yeah.
Inventories where kind of things start to break a little bit because you're like, all right, okay, you do have a warehouse. Like,
Sure.
what did you buy? But yeah, in terms of the businesses we work with, it started off as digital natives. And then what we found as we kept working is that, wait a minute, e-commerce businesses have some of the similar pain points. They're funding inventory. They've got to get cash. Okay, they need a banking relationship.
Yeah.
Which one of our clients found the best tool? You know, and there's things like Bluevine, which essentially gave you a loan as long as you had a certain amount of deposits. It's like, okay, they become part of our our banking ecosystem now.
Yeah.
And that continued with every industry you mentioned. You know, on the tech side, these guys have X number of run rate. So they're trying to figure out, how can I extend that run rate?
Yeah.
I don't pay income taxes because we're running negative, but is there a tax credit that will put cash into my business? And it turns out there was. The R&D tax credit's been a great way to keep businesses going longer than the capital that they've raised. Non-dilutive capital from the government is the best kind of capital.
Absolutely.
No strings attached. So for us, those are the businesses that we succeed very well with. I'll just mention I mentioned the digital advertisers. You know, Facebook marketing was doing this at the time. So I was like, how are these? I have clients who are like, dropped out of college, were doing like $1 million in revenue. They'd never had a job before, really.
Wow.
But they figured out how to create Facebook ads that made all kind of money. Well, as a service business, you don't really have expenses.
Yeah.
These guys are grinding with maybe a contractor in Ukraine. So we figured out, like, wait a minute, like, I know you're not thinking about contributing to your retirement, but either you've got to spend $200,000 and pay zero taxes.
Yes.
Or this is the trade-off, or you can pay a little tax and keep the rest.
That's right.
And it's funny to kind of figure out how business owners think
that
about that.
way. Yeah,
Exactly. So yeah, I think those are the playbooks when I say that we've kind of determined the pain points and the solves for those.
Yeah.
Much easier to do it for a narrow set. But with us, it started just, hey, are they going to be able to email us their documents? Yes or no?
For sure. Yeah. It's so nice to see that you can work with a firm that isn't wearing a tie, you know, or that doesn't necessarily look like you at all, whether it's in size or in personality type or even location. Like, you know, it's been nice to see you guys grow and be relatable to folks that you're trying to target and be a part of their group with, right? And there's a great market right now, I think, personally, of SMB services that are out there, you know, like folks like Relay, which we both know, and folks like Xero and all these other softwares that can be very, very helpful to SMBs that are growing. And to have a partner like you there, I think it's phenomenal. So kudos to you guys there.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah, and speaking more about relatability, like I want to know more about you as well and how you built this thing. You have a family, you got kids. I find that sometimes founders feel like they have to have a trade-off between, you know, spending time at home or grinding it out. And how has that worked for you? Like, is there a right or wrong way to do it? And what did it look like when you were building TechSack?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think it hits home because I think the other reason that I wanted to leave the Big Four is the flexibility.
Yeah.
You know, again, going back to 2017, you've got to be in the office.
Yeah.
If you're not grinding long hours, what are you really doing?
Yeah.
You know, and some of that's FaceTime. I mean, some of that.
Totally.
And I had to negotiate early. I think I learned early because I was a young dad. Now I'm a little older, but I still say I'm a young dad.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out, hey, what is this work-life balance? Is it really work-life balance? And I kind of figured out that it kind of falls on you to navigate that. So for me, becoming an entrepreneur wasn't necessarily about working less hours. It was about having the freedom to control when those hours were.
Yeah.
And for me, it was that I missed one of my daughter's rehearsals when she was like young, like 5 or 6. And I remember getting there. I had to leave downtown LA. I had to get to our little suburb. And I basically got there for the last 5 minutes. She'd already gone and she's just crying.
Ah, man.
And just even now, like I feel the guilt of it. And it was just not being able to plan around that. And what being an entrepreneur became was actually harder in a way to find that. You have way more demands, way more responsibility. And I think for me, I chose it as a calling to really find a way to be flexible around family demands, but also like you have to find a way to be flexible around client needs.
For sure.
Because at the same time, I mean, I've got clients that needed to raise capital or they were out of business. And that's 20 people, 20 families are going to be out. So, so I think the challenge, you know, on the human side is, well, how do I live a fulfilling kind of whole human life? And that's the beauty, I think, of entrepreneurship is that's the question you get to answer. And it takes time and it takes iterations, and there's been versions of how things work at home. But yeah, today I've got a kid at college who decided not to do accounting.
Oh my God. He saw you and he was like, I don't know if I want to do this.
But he chose architecture. So I think,
you go.
You know, so like anything you do, I think what I tell my kids is like, you're going to work hard, but it's the question of how you determine your own quality of life around that.
Yeah.
And I think entrepreneurs have a beautiful opportunity to structure that in a way that works for them.
Yeah.
If back to the point about learning, if you're willing to learn from that, because that's another instance of pain where I was like, all right, I've got to figure out a different way to do this.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I don't work 60-hour weeks some week. It does mean that some weeks I work 10 hours.
For sure.
Know? I just came back from, I got to see my team, Liverpool, win the Premier League. So I
saw it on Instagram. You went wild, man. That looks so much fun.
But man, if I had to put that in for PTO and it was like a Friday to Monday thing, you know, and I still have to work it out with the team, and I got to, you know, I've got emails I got to respond to, but I get to have that flexibility, but it's because I think, you know, like other people I look up to, is they're figuring out, hey, this is the life I want first.
Yeah.
And how does business work with that? So I actually think that work-life balance is kind of a misnomer because it means there are two very different things that need to be done at different times and thought about separately. And I think, I forget who said it, but you know, work-life integration, I think is kind of a better mindset to think about how they work together.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. I empathize with anyone who's, you know, got a family and they're like, hey, I've got 3 kids to care for, and I don't exactly know how the business is gonna work. I mean, that's the challenge of it. But on the other side of figuring that out, I think is a much better life that you can't even imagine right now.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, and I'm so glad you're being really honest with it, because I have had folks on the podcast before who are recent parents, 2-year-olds. You know, I'm thinking a couple who had their own law firm, right? And they were figuring it out. But the one thing that resonated with me about what they said was, Mike, I refer back to another podcast, you guys should check it out. He was like, I had to at some point ask my old employer, like, can I leave to go pick up my daughter at 2 today? And he was like, why am I having to ask this question when I know the quality of my work is amazing? Why don't I put that quality of work into something that I can offer myself and be able to be there for the recitals or the rehearsals or, you know, family requirements of yourself? And that does not mean that you are working less, right? It in fact probably means that you're working more because you have to work around all the requirements of running a business, but that flexibility is certainly there. So I'm glad you brought that up, and you certainly are a young dad. That's for damn sure. We're not going to talk about age, but I still can't believe you got a child in college. That's amazing, man. Congrats.
Thank you. And a 3-year-old, so it is funny.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know how you managed that.
Call it the oopsie gap. But no, I think I empathize with that. I mean, I think the needs are different each stage, and I actually think a lot about how there's lessons from, you know, reflecting on how you parent without controlling, because as you get teenagers, they don't want to be told what to do.
For sure.
You know? And you start to learn like, okay, wait, hey, if I do this differently, and if I build some kind of agreement or I build some kind of a goal or incentive, then I'll get compliance. That's what we want at the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
You know, sometimes my wife's like, hey, you're thinking about this too much like a businessman. I'm like, but it worked. You know? So like having like we talk about quarterly bonuses, like my kids get semesterly bonuses. You know?
So funny.
And part of it, and like part of
grade based, like if they did well on their grades.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And every letter has a different value.
You're kidding.
And then 30% of it they have to put away in their savings. But now my daughter's 16, and she's like, how much do I have in my savings? I was like, well, what's going on? She's like, well, I'm buying a car. I need to know how much is in there. And I'm like, okay.
I love it.
So you know, you kind of build this stuff out, And I think you can learn from, again, the integration is like, I've learned there too that, look, if you ever try to tell an employee exactly what to do, it doesn't work out. Because then when they're done, what do they do?
Yeah.
They ask you, hey, what exactly do I need to do again? So I think like, it's kind of funny, maybe it's something I'll blog about, but learning how to incentivize a teenager is not too different than learning how to incentivize a manager.
Yeah.
Someone that you want to encourage autonomy in and direction.
Yeah.
There's parallels. So anyway, it's back to kind of learning between those, but having you also have the ability, I think, in terms of talking long hours, is to become much more intentional about your work. So anything, this, anything that is monotonous and repetitive, why are you still doing it? If that's costing you an hour, your W-2 job, it's like, hey, that's your job, you do it. The beauty about this world is it's so big. You can go get a VA. You can outsource monotonous work. And today, I mean, you can automate it. If you figure out how to do it right.
For sure.
And I think that is the calling. I think what I'll give to entrepreneurs that are still figuring this out is like, it's not something that you just can do. It's not just upside. I think it's a calling. I think it's, what could be delegated and automated must be, because that's what frees you up, not just to spend time with family, but to think about the next level of the business.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I think about that daily. Like the fact that, I can run a service-based business that's supporting entrepreneurs, fintechs, and credit unions and banks on my own is only doable because I have automated processes in the background. And yes, there are other people supporting me and bringing that on. But I 100% agree that if you aren't using, I'm not going to be that guy like use AI and it'll save the world and you'll make tons of money. That's not the case. But if you use automation and AI the right way, it will take away the monotonous work, right? That you used to have to do and spend hours on. So is that, you think, one of the biggest pieces of advice for somebody coming into entrepreneurship? Or that was going to be one of my questions to you is, what is something that you wish you knew when you were starting out as an entrepreneur? I've read a blog post about a 10-year reflection you did.
Yeah.
And is that the same idea of like, having pride in yourself? That's what you said in that article.
Tell
me more.
That's right. Yeah, I think that one was about the human side of staying connected with people along the journey. So like, and I'll come back to the point on automation, but we talk about a pyramid where like bookkeeping compliance is there, then there's advisory. Well, at the bottom of it, we talk about connection.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the people that you spend more time with, more than your wife, more than your kids, are the people you work with. Whether they're clients or your peers or the people that report to you. And the relationships you build kind of fade away when you leave jobs or when they go away. But it doesn't take away the value of the connection that you build.
For sure.
And part of it was what I wish I did is it stayed more in touch. And now again, because I've got free time, I can go back out and reach out and, hey, what are you doing? And oftentimes like I'm doing that with a client right now where started when I was pretty involved in the business. And now about 30% of my time is client facing. And it's typically with our new clients. So I've got this cohort of loyal, awesome clients, if you check this out, who no longer work with me. And, kind of back in that thread, I was like, wait, I'm going to reach out to Dan. I'm going to reach out to Ryan. I'm going to see how they're doing. Yeah. Because they're crushing it. Yeah. And I just wanted to say, like, I know they're my client, but kind of as a buddy, like, I love what you're doing. Yeah. And it's just a conversation. When we talk, it's like 5% is business, and then there's like maybe like one or two to-dos at the end, but everything in between is the sweet stuff of what are you reading? What are you doing with AI? Yeah. And then to your point, back to automation. I mean, I think, John D. Rockefeller, who's the father of the modern corporation, had a management system that, really laid the groundwork for how we run companies today. And say what you will about him, one of his mantras that he told his executive team, and if you read the book, he's got this really cool description of they met every day at lunch, and he would just sit back, not say anything, and I think eventually he would pop in and change the course of the direction. But one of the things he said is that your number one job at Standard Oil is to train the person next to you to do your job, and to kick your feet up and think about how you're going to make more money for Standard Oil. Now, say what you will about being greedy and all that. I mean, what he created was really a self-driven ecosystem where people could create time to think about what the next level of business would be.
Right.
And I think that's what's really important. I think that as an entrepreneur, when you start off, how can I do everything? How can I do more? How can I take care of everything? And I think as the limits to growth is, are you really having the time and space to reflect about what the next version of this looks like? And I mean, back to your point about AI, I mean, I think part of that thinking time should be about what AI can do to help solve your current problems.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we're thinking about how AI is going to replace us or how it's going to hurt us. And it just takes away from like, hey, what can I outsource? What can I delegate? What can I automate? Because really, I mean, I think what I found is that giving my problems to AI isn't necessarily a solution, but it's a voice.
For sure.
Right? It's a voice in the many of how to figure out the next iteration. So yeah, I think finding the time to really think about, obviously 80% execution, but finding the time to think about the next version of the business has been pivotal. That's
amazing. I have one more kind of topic I want to bring up. It's probably a bit of an emotional one. It is for me particularly, because when I started to think about entrepreneurship, a big motivator was not family for sure, but more so like where my family has come from, right? And what they have done to be able to allow me to even take the shot at entrepreneurship. And I owe a lot to just even having the ability to try to my parents and my wife. But was that a motivating factor for you to also try, like not just the family you're looking to, raise and bring into the world, but the family who's brought you here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll say something controversial that I really believe it's just a positive statement, that I think having an immigrant background is an incredible advantage, and it's not something that I want to do disservice to. And oftentimes when I talk about, and it does get emotional when you talk about, or when you ask someone, what does it mean to you that your parents came here with nothing?
Yeah.
And typically what you hear are things like, well, I owe it to them to make the most of this opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's a very different perspective. If you kind of hear the culture now about work, like, I don't want to do that kind of work. Like, I'm finding a place of work that works for me and not the other way around. And I don't want to get into that because then they start sounding like a boomer, like back in my day. But I think it's a fundamentally different, I think, space of gratitude to say, hey, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to give it to everyone that got us here.
Yeah.
And just understanding that we live, say what you say about like where we are. I think when you ask people like, where are the places to go that you can start with nothing and try your heart out and succeed?
Yeah.
I mean, the US is number one. Like I'll say that because I have clients inbound. We have a whole host of inbound clients from countries all over the world. Argentina, who's dealt with rampant inflation, is coming up. They're a big service provider to the US for development spend.
Yeah.
You look at countries like Venezuela. You know where the largest segment of Venezuelan entrepreneurs are? Miami. They've all come here to find a better life. And they're creating, I was just at Miami Tech Week, they're creating amazing businesses that they probably could have done back there, but they came here because they can swing the bat here.
Sure.
So I think just the idea that you can swing a bat here and honor all the energy that got you here. I mean, it's super important. My mom's first job was a dentist in Mexico. Her first job here, she was pregnant with me, was at Macy's. And I mean, you better believe when I didn't feel like doing homework,
you did.
She reminded me of that.
For sure.
She's like, I didn't assemble your crib 9 months pregnant so you could slack off. And that kind of gets you a little bit. It's a little bit of a guilt trip.
It does.
Know? But I think, now at this stage, I just want to honor that. And I think it would be to do a disservice, really, to not do as much as I can do.
100%. Yeah, I'm so glad I asked the question, because that notion of doing a disservice is something that I talk to my wife about all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not because like I'm trying to get out there and make as much money as possible. It's actually more so because I'm trying to make sure that the effort and time that was spent in building a life for me, whether it was in the United States and in Canada was worthwhile, right? Like that means so much to me. So we're out here grinding,
That's right.
Yeah. Miguel, thank you so much for the time. I hope you had fun on the podcast. I certainly did. I know viewers definitely got a lot out of your conversation. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all those who joined on this episode of Behind the Business. My name is Fahim Sabja.
Miguel Centeno.
And we hope to see you on the next episode of Behind the Business. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in on this episode of Behind the Business. If you enjoyed it, do me a favor, share it with someone who's on their own entrepreneurial journey or thinking about starting one. Also, follow, subscribe, and leave a review whenever you listen. Lastly, keep up with us on Instagram at BehindTheBiz_POD. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep building, and keep listening. This is Fahim Sabja signing off from Behind the Business.